Welcome to the Dr. Hockey Podcast. I'm Dr. Jay Calvert. Today, we have a very special show. Obviously, we know that the trade deadline is looming and there's a lot of activity. So I have on with me, of course, Jason Berkley, the biggest Red Wings fan of all time, as voted by everybody in Detroit and the Red Wings themselves. Jason, how are you doing?
I was good until the score became 5-2 Dallas.
Dallas is tough. I'm sorry, man. I don't know what to tell you.
That's not acceptable.
Well, we'll see how they do. But thank you for that update and report. We have on with us Lyle Richardson from Hockey News. Again, thank you for coming back on, Lyle. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me back on.
We got a lot going on in the NHL from a standing standpoint, from a playoff picture standpoint, from a trade deadline standpoint. It's just been from a Canadian teams standpoint. I got so much I want to talk about, and we'll try to do it in 40 minutes or less, if that sounds good to you. But it's a lot. I mean, I'm sure we could do 5 hours on this stuff.
Yeah, it's as you said before we started off. It's been an interesting year so far for Canadian NHL teams, for the league in general, but Canadian teams in particular.
I mean, I think like Winnipeg. Where did this come from? I mean, they got rid of all their like major players, and now they're killing it.
Well, they didn't get rid of all their major
Not
players,
all,
Jay, but
Blake Wheeler and Dubois, and now
yeah, and I think that's key to what you were talking about. In the last few years, there was kind of a sense that the Jets were in a bit of a slow decline. And it wasn't a secret sort of within hockey circles that there were some divisions in that dressing room at the time. And I mean, I'm not turning around and laying blame on Blake Wheeler and Pierre-Luc Dubois. It's just sometimes you get different factions or what have you in a dressing room. Sometimes things don't necessarily gel, but I don't think it's any coincidence that once Wheeler was bought out of his contract and they traded Pierre-Luc Dubois, that just changed the whole dynamic of this team. And of course, as well, re-signing Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele to identical contracts right before the start of the season. That was a huge vote of confidence for management, for the coaching staff, because it was like, hey, these two guys, they could have left next summer. Free agency was beckoning, and teams were going to line up and pay them whatever they wanted, especially in an off season where the salary cap was going to jump significantly for the first time in years. And these two guys bought in and said, no, we believe in what's going on here. We want to stay and be part of this. And that has just, as you said, it's changed the whole dynamic of that team. And here they are mid-season, and they're jockeying for first overall with like Boston and Colorado, and of all teams, Vancouver.
Vancouver is unbelievable. And I just think, first of all, I think Mark Scheifele's just such a great he's just such a great player, but a great leader. And they have the cast on that team to really make it happen. They've got some just aggressive offense. They've got good D, and of course the goaltending solid. So there you have it. It's
but here's the thing. In all fairness, I was hearing rumblings a couple months ago about they were going to trade Hellebuyck, and this and that and the other thing. So, I mean, and Pierre-Luc Dubois was gone before the season started. So, is there something else that clicked? That's, I think, what my big question is.
Well, yeah, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, Jason. I honestly think it was because once you remove that element and kind of that element of uncertainty as well. Because if you recall, at the end of last season, there was a lot of things up in the air. Like you were saying, Hellebuyck and Scheifele were mentioned throughout the summer as possible trade candidates because they had a year left on their contracts. Nobody knew if they were going to re-sign. The expectation was they were probably going to head to free agency in the summer of 2024. You had, of course, the Pierre-Luc Dubois situation where they wound up trading him to the Kings. They bought out Blake Wheeler. Lots of uncertainty. But again, by removing some of those elements in Dubois and Wheeler, it kind of brought the dressing room kind of closer together. And then, as I said, when Hellebuyck and Scheifele re-signed, that was just, you had your two veteran leaders saying, we want to stay here and be part of this. And that was a huge lift for those guys. And let's not forget, too, they got some young guys coming up, like Cole Perfetti's been playing very well for them as well. They got, Gabe Velarde and Ali Afalo from the Kings in that Dubois deal, and they were a breath of fresh air into that team. So
they're great players.
Absolutely.
I mean, Iafallo is just money. The guy's so good. You know, I watched him a lot here in Los Angeles, and you know, Velarde's great. That was a strong trade, I think, on both sides. And I think you know, we had Pat Brisson on our last episode talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kopitar, and I think that worked out for everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, the Kings are kind of struggling a bit, and you know, Dubois has been struggling a bit as well. You know, he got called out by the head coach today that, you know, he's got to step up and perform. But I think it's more than just him. I don't think you want to hang all the Kings' problems necessarily entirely on Dubois. I think there's a whole bunch of other issues going on there right now.
For sure. I mean, the Kings started out very hot. They, you know, I think they broke a record for the most road wins in the NHL of all time.
Something like along that line. Yeah, I believe it was a road wins league record So and then all of a sudden, just in recent weeks, it's just kind of fallen apart. I believe they've lost 9 of their last 10 or something along that line. I think they've dropped quite a few since mid-December. So
I think there are 2, 6, and 4 as of last night, and then they tied. They lost in overtime again last night. So 2, 6, and 5 in their last 13.
Yeah,
not awesome.
No, and well, you know, it's not good when your general manager has to give the head coach a public vote of confidence. I mean, if I'm Todd McClellan, I'm not going to hang my hat on that for too long. It's like, you got to start turning things around, or there could be a change behind the bench.
Speaking of Vancouver, you know, this team is totally on fire. I didn't realize until I started looking into what happened. You know, of course, I love Rick Tocchet because I'm a Penguins fan from days of yore. And seeing him come out from behind the TNT or TBS desk or wherever he was, you know, hanging out with, you know, the guys talking about hockey. Now he's coaching again and doing a great job. But I didn't realize they've got Rutherford in there. They have like a Penguins reunion going in the front office.
Penguins West Coast, that, you know, Canadian edition, that's exactly. Kind of seems to be the situation there, but well, they brought in Rutherford, you know, a couple of years ago, and you know, Tocchet's been like their third coach in as many years, but this time he's been able to make the pieces fit. And I'd also say as well, it's also an indication as well of all that young talent that they've been kind of building is all finally clicking in, you know, and firing on all cylinders. Because last season, guys like Thatcher Demko was hurt, Brock Besser was injured at time, and of course he was going through you know, the passing of his father, and that was really hard on him. And a couple of other guys have been playing hurt as well. But this season, everybody's healthy. Besser is on pace for his best season ever. But the guys for me that are really driving the bus there's 3 of them. It's Quinn Hughes, their captain, and the leading scorer amongst defensemen right now. Elias Pettersson, of course, and JT Miller. It's those 3 that really are kind of, you know, they're that fusion that's really driving this, you know, the warp core, if you will, if you're a Star Trek fan, that's driving the Starship Canucks right now, if I can kind of mix metaphors here or whatever.
Now you're talking my language.
There we go, Jason. Yeah.
You know, JT Miller is he's such a complete player. He's tough as nails. He's great in front of the net. He's got a 6 shot from the circles. He's a real winner, and when it comes to, you know, generating offense, and he's a great 2-way player as well. I think he doesn't get all the credit he deserves for his defense. He makes it really hard for people to score when he's on the ice. And
absolutely.
I mean, don't you think he's just so tough?
Oh, and he's been that way for a long time. I mean, last season was a bit of a down year for him because, of course, he signed that big new contract, and there was kind of the heightened expectations. I think he kind of felt that burden a bit of it as well. But this season, again, everybody's kind of started fresh. But they did one move. They've also been, and because it's a Jim Rutherford team, it's not surprised that they've been so far the busiest team in the trade market this season. They've made 6 deals thus far. Some of them have been small ones, but the most significant one they made was acquiring Nikita Zadorov from the Flames. Because they were looking for additional depth on defense, and they were looking for a big physical shutdown D-man, plays with some snarl. and they got it into Zadorov. And to me, like, they were playing well before they got him, but after they picked him up, it's like their level of play just jumped significantly. And that's why we're seeing them right now being the dominant team in the league, if you will.
You mentioned Calgary. Why does it always seem that Calgary is kind of like the breeding ground for a really great player to then pick up and leave? Like, they just can't keep these guys. They can't keep Gaudreau. I mean, they couldn't keep these guys happy there.
Chuck.
Is there something? What was that?
We couldn't keep Kachuk.
Yeah.
Keep Kachuk. I mean, all these guys that are really, I mean, I think they would have won a cup had they been able to keep all the players that have left. It reminds me of my Lions years ago, before they were successful in the NFL, that these players would be great players. They couldn't keep them. They go elsewhere and always win a Super Bowl.
Wait, can I
What's
can I
going on in
mark
Calgary?
that? It only took 14 minutes before you mentioned the Lions, so that's pretty good.
Well,
You held
look,
off. That
you
was
got to
pretty
give
good.
me. You got to give me some credit here. This is the first time in my entire lifetime we're going to the NFC Championship on Sunday. This is a unique. Come on.
It's huge.
Hey,
I'm going to give it to you.
I got to tell you, even here in Canada, listen, we know about we follow the NFL. We know the Lions story. Let me tell you something. Everybody's cheering for the Lions. Okay.
I think all of North America is.
Go
Lions.
Lions. Everybody loves the underdog, baby.
Right.
So yeah, everybody's cheering for them.
I love it.
Yeah, but just quickly to your point about Calgary, the problem seems to be just trying to build and maintain a winning culture there that would make players want to stay, because in the salary cap era, there's not a problem. You can't use money as an excuse that you can't keep players anymore. And the Flames were willing to pay these guys. They were willing to pay Kachuk and Gaudreau whatever they wanted. Like, they were going to pay Gaudreau much more than what he got from Columbus.
So it's not money. There's something inherently going on there that players just don't want to stay.
And it's the culture. I think it's developing a winning culture there, because, I mean, if you go look up the road to Edmonton, the coldest NHL city in the world, and players want to stay. Now, it helps when you've got two guys named McDavid and Draisaitl there. A lot of guys want to play with these guys, but they have developed a winning culture. They've got like the best arena in hockey, for one. That arena they have in Edmonton is truly state of the art. It's the best arena in the league. But that's just all part and parcel of it. They've built a winning culture there. They're trying to build a winning culture. Whereas down the road in Calgary, there's been a lot of management changes. There's and just some uncertainty. And of course, they've been trying to get an arena deal too, and that's been part of it. But it's just that overall thing, because Calgary, actually, I've lived in Calgary. It's a nicer city in terms of weather than Edmonton is, but it's a beautiful city, and that doesn't seem to be the knock. I mean, Gaudreau and Kachuk didn't dislike Calgary. I just think there was just other things going on there.
I don't know. I mean, Gaudreau literally has fallen into oblivion now, and he couldn't wait to get out so bad he went to Columbus. I mean, it's just like, of all places, really? That's where you want to go to get out of Calgary? I don't think
it was so. No, he could have gone to the Islanders. He could have gone. The Flyers really wanted him, but he wanted to be close enough to be close to home, but not so close that he had to deal with all the family drama. And I know that's why I live where I live now, because that way I'm 7 hours away from my family, close enough to be there if they need me, far enough away I'm not sucked into the drama. I think that's what Gaudreau was doing.
Gaudreau, boy, what a.
You don't hear him being mentioned. He's not talked about.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's like gone. I almost forgot he was playing until I heard him. His name was mentioned briefly in something, but it was when he was on Calgary. It was like there's nothing going on there.
I can't help but wonder. I'm sure he's very happy in terms of his family situation there, because he did cite his family reasons as to why he chose Columbus and took less money to go there. But I can't help but think, though, on a professional level, when it comes to playing the games, that maybe there might be some regrets coming in there that he left what was at the time a really good team in Calgary that was on its way up. Because you're right, he's gone. You want to talk about teams that are having difficulty building a winning culture? Oh boy, Columbus is, and it's a shame, because Columbus has a really solid core of hockey fans. They really do, and they just have not been well served by the NHL team they've got right now. So,
and they're on their way when they swept and beat Tampa before their cup.
Yep,
they were on their way. Like, look, keep Bobrovsky, keep Seth Jones, keep these guys happy. You do whatever you got to do, and you could have had. Again, that's another team, much like Calgary, who could have been very successful and possibly gone for a deep run for a cup at least, or maybe even won one potentially.
Well, I also think part of the problem too that's led to their decline in the last 3 years was letting go of John Tortorella, because John Tortorella took that team. If you recall, like when he joined them in 2016-17, they were on a road to oblivion. They're where they are now. They were headed to where they are now. Torts came in and turned the whole culture and turned everything right around. I mean, he won his second Jack Adams trophy there in his first season with them, but they had one bad year coming out of the whole COVID, I think it was in the COVID shortened season. They didn't play well there. The whole Dubois got traded to Winnipeg for Line A, and there's another guy who's falling off the radar, same place.
Yep.
And they decided, well, we're gonna let Tortorella go. I guess it's not working. And what happens? Torts goes to Philadelphia, and look at the work he's doing there. Yeah. Torts has been successful in every city, in various degrees, at every city that he's gone to, except for Vancouver. Because when he went to the Canucks at that time, he was trying to change the culture of a very well entrenched group of guys like the Sedins, Kevin Bieksa, Roberto Luongo, Ryan Kessler. They were the veterans who ran that team, and they didn't want to play Torts' style of game. But every other place that Tortorella's gone, he's had various degrees of success. So it doesn't surprise me he's doing as well as he did in Philadelphia, and had Columbus at least heading in the right direction before they let him go.
Yeah, and that Philadelphia they are doing very well, and we saw I'm close by to the Ducks, and I saw Jamie Drysdale get traded there, and I think that's just going to be more fuel to the fire on the Flyers. I mean, that's a big pickup for them. He's a great player.
Absolutely. I mean, he did have, he's had a couple of injury shortened seasons, but it's injuries. That's no reflection on his talent or his abilities. Tortorella is thrilled to get this kid. I mean, he was like, okay, Cutter Gauthier, I don't know who he is from a hole in the wall, but Jamie Drysdale, yeah, come on down. Like this is the kid that he really wanted to have, that type of defenseman, that type of puck moving defenseman on his blue line. So far he's been a good fit with them since he arrived there. But yeah, that's another club that like the Canucks, like the Jets, have exceeded expectations this year. I mean, they were kicking off. Remember, they were kicking off their rebuild when they hired Danny Briere as their general manager and Keith Jones as their team president. It was, we're rebuilding. This is what's going to happen. We're rebuilding, and they've just exceeded expectations. Some of their fans are getting excited that, okay, maybe we'll be buyers and they'll start, bringing in some extra talent to help them out. But Briere's, I think he's going to stick with the core that he's got. I don't see him sacrificing futures for a quick fix here. The team's exceeded expectations. If they make the playoffs, great. That's excellent. But he's playing the long game and still looking ahead. And that's why I let you see them focusing more on the younger guys. Okay, Gauthier didn't want to be with them. Okay, let's bring in an excellent young defenseman. Let's focus on the younger guys we already have here. And it's also helped, too, that some of their veterans are healthy this season. Remember, last season, they didn't have Sean Couturier and Cam Atkinson. And that's made a big difference this season, too, having those veteran leaders there. Travis Konechny has just been playing lights out. He loves playing for Tortorella. There are some players who just love playing for John Tortorella, and he's one of them. So I think it's going to bode well for their chances of signing him to. They can start contract talks with him on July 1st to sign him to an extension, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see them do that.
Yeah, well, Konechny's he's money. That guy is so good.
Yes, and he plays with a chip on his shoulder too. He plays Philadelphia hockey, so yeah, they really love him there.
Well, staying with our Canadian team's theme, Edmonton has been on fire. Something clicked finally. I don't know how I don't know what happened. I watch that team all the time. I love watching McDavid and Draisaitl play. And I think they just were, I don't know what was happening earlier in the season, but it's working now. And they just brought in Corey Perry. What impact do you think that's going to have on their run for the playoffs here?
Well, first of all, with Perry, he's going to be a solid addition for this team heading into play. This is a guy with a well-established track record for elevating his game in the postseason. I mean, it's not for nothing that Dallas got him in 2020 and they go to the final. Montreal gets him in 2021, they go to the final. Tampa Bay gets him 2022, they go to the final. hello, right? And even last year, okay, they didn't get to the final, but he just made life miserable for the Leafs in that first round series. So he was off to a good start in Chicago. Things kind of went off the rails there a bit. They terminated his contract, but he's back now. He's dealt with the issues that led to his contract termination. He's looking for a second chance. And you look at his experience and what he can do and the leadership that he'll bring. I mean, yes, you've got leaders there, but none have that pedigree that Corey Perry has. The guy that always leads by example, who steps it up. Yeah, you hate playing against him, but you love having him on your team. He's not called the Worm for nothing, So I think that's a solid addition and very affordable. And hey, the Oilers are the team of second chances. I mean, they did with Evander Kane. People thought, oh, that's going to be a disaster. Nope, he fit in beautifully there. They brought Sam Gagner back again for a third go round. He's fitting in well there. It's a team of second chances. But getting back to what you were saying about what changed was when they replaced Jay Woodcroft as head coach with Kris Knoblauch. That changed everything. There's three significant things I'm just going to touch on quickly that he changed. The biggest one was that he's got them focusing, his defensemen, he's got them focusing more on being aware of their play in defensive zone. And that, of all people, they get Paul Coffey to thank for that. Because Paul Coffey was brought in as an assistant coach. Now, if you watch Paul Coffey in his prime in the 80s and 90s, he was an offensive-minded defenseman who was like, hey, listen, I'm not the guy playing defense here. I'm here to join the rush and score goals. But he also knows that you pick your moments to join the rush. You pick your moments to pinch. You have to read the play. If you're a defenseman, the game is laid out in front of you like a chessboard. Okay, and you can see what's going to develop. You can read the play. And the problem for the Oilers before they made the coaching change was their defense was joining the rush far too often, and they were pinching far too often. And once they were again the offensive zone, and that made them susceptible to turnovers. That made them susceptible to giving up odd man rushes. Especially like if you could pick them off in the neutral zone, you're going back the other way in transition, and of course that just made life miserable for their goaltenders. And then the whole thing with the team by that point was everybody started getting antsy. They were afraid to really do anything, or else they were afraid the puck was going to end up the back of their net. So he just managed basically their defense. It was just like, look, pick your moments. You don't have to go up and join the rush all the time. So that was one factor. The second, of course, is because the defense got better in their own zone. That made life better for their goaltender. Stuart Skinner is playing better now, of course. Calvin Pickard, who they called up, after they sent Jack Campbell down, they formed a pretty good tandem. But the other thing as well is they're getting secondary scoring, and they're getting it from like third line guys like Warren Fogle, from Ryan McLeod. I mentioned Sam Gagner. These guys are stepping up and they're scoring clutch goals. So that's helping to take some of that burden. They're not going to be big goal scorers like Draisaitl and McDavid and Zach Hyman and Evander Kane. But, when those guys are being shut down, it's good to know that these guys can step up and kind of help fill that void and maybe get a clutch goal for you.
Yeah, I agree with you. Fogel's good. That guy he's got a nose for the net, and he really understands, his role on that team. And that is essential, because you can't just say, we're just going to count on these guys to get the goals. You won't get the playoffs with that. You don't have a cup run with that. You need scoring from all those secondary lines, and it's got to be sustained, and it seems to be now. I mean, like I said, it's awesome to watch, and I like everybody wants to see a McDavid run for the cup. Everybody. I mean, I'm sure McDavid wants to see it more than anyone.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, and let's face it. I mean, geez, they're on one hell of a heater right now. I mean, 13 straight wins. I mean, that's the record for Canadian franchises. It's hard to believe when you think back of some of the great Canadian teams you think of the Canadians in the late 70s and the Gretzky Oilers of the 80s, that none of them went on the type of a winning streak like these Oilers have, and that's lifted them from, it's hard to believe 2 months ago this was a team that was near the bottom of the standings, and now they've moved into third in the Pacific Division, and they're still rising. They're looking like the team now that a lot of folks myself included, had down as one of the cup contenders coming out of the Western Conference. And if they keep this up, they're going to be right up there. So yeah, and all it took was just basically changing their defensive style of game and getting more production from their secondary scorers.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a lot of fun. I really hope to see them just keep it up and get there. It's
yeah,
watching those guys play is it's awesome. And Zach Hyman, not to take away from we all talk about Draisaitl and McDavid. Zach Hyman is a deadly goal scorer. He is a miserable guy to play against. He's very tough. He scores from all over the place. He's unpredictable. He shows up in places you don't expect him. So I think that he's a big part of their success also. And I know he gets backseat to the McDavid and Draisaitl, but you cannot forget about him.
No, and he's also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
I was going to say that McDavid has 2 years left on his contract in Edmonton. My question for you was going to be: do you think that if he doesn't win a cup there, does he leave?
This is one I have to answer carefully. If you have any Oilers fans, they tend to, how dare you? Don't you ever talk about him?
No.
He's our precious unicorn. How dare you? No,
I get it. Just Gretzky was too, but Gretzky at this point in his career there already had a couple cups under his belt, and it's at a certain point he's gonna have to say to himself, look, he's been there. I've been there for I think.
Been there since 2015. So
about 10 years.
Going on 9 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. So 2026 his contract ends. I think he leaves. Jay and I have talked about this off the air a lot of times, that we think that if they don't win a cup, he's gone. I don't think he's going to stick around to kind of see what's going to happen over the next, there's a window, as you know.
Sure. But I think if they're still right up there competitive, if they're still among the best in the league, I think he rolls the dice and stays. But if they drop off significantly over the next couple of years, and I'm not surprised that you mentioned this, because this kind of talk came up 2 months ago when they were floundering at the bottom of the standings. All of a sudden it became, and you talk about McDavid leaving in 2 years, Draisaitl could leave next summer, not the summer 2024, next summer. Now, the Oilers are going to open contract extension talks with him on July 1st, but if they don't win, it could be the same thing. Like now, honestly, do I think that he's going to sign a contract extension this summer? I don't think so. I think he's going to wait and see how things pan out. Now, if the Oilers win the Stanley Cup this year, I would not be surprised. Yes. A lot of big contracts get signed in the afterglow of the Stanley Cup parade and celebrate. How much? Sure.
Here's your bottle of champagne, and here's a pen.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what happened with the Blackhawks. Okay. All those Stanley Cup parades. You wanted me to stay for how much? Sure.
That's true.
But if they don't win the cup, I think maybe he plays wait and see for next season. But with McDavid, it could be the same thing. Now, like I said, if they win the cup this year, then I think you're going to see, sign, I'll stay. We'll make it happen. But those are going to be the two that are going to be really, really interesting to watch. And if they end up getting bounced in the first round, oh boy, people are going to be really nervous in Edmonton.
Right. Yeah.
Lyle, for our listeners, I want you to run down your social media stuff so that they can find you online and on social media.
Absolutely. There's my website. It's spectorshockey.net. That's where I encapsulate every all the NHL news of the day, as well as all the trade and free agent rumors. You can find me at the Hockey News. I do their rumor roundup 5 days a week. Looking at the top rumors of the day. I'm also over at Bleacher Report doing a whole bunch of stuff for them as well. So those are the main three. And if you have any listeners who are in Germany, I also write for Ice Hockey News as well. That's the German version. Ice Hockey, eishockey.com. So nice. Yes, I write for them as well.
Excellent. Yeah, no, people should follow your stuff. It's all very up to date, totally on point, and it's really helpful for all of us who just, love to see what's happening in the NHL, it's just, the story of how the cup gets won is always fun to follow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So speaking of that, I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I always got to come back to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I just, we're on the side. I'm sorry that I don't want to spend a lot of time on the Habs. I can't.
It's okay. It's okay.
Even.
I am a Habs fan. Can you tell? I am a Habs fan, but they're rebuilding. It's fine. The one good thing I'll say very quickly about being a Habs fan when the team is finally rebuilding after years and years of ignoring their fans who've been screaming for rebuilds. It takes a load off your shoulders. You're not worrying about making the playoffs.
Right.
So you can kind of sit back and enjoy the development of your building. Now we still have some Habs fans who they want the team to tank the season, but win every game. So yeah. But they're silly people. But the rest of us, no, but I'm being more hopeful though. Next season though, I think is when you're going to start to see the expectations go up for Canadians fans. We understand, most of us, that they're in the middle of, this is like the second full season of a rebuild under the current regime, and they are showing improvement, believe it or not. They are.
No, they are.
They are. But I think the expectations are going to start to grow starting next season. We're going to really want to see them begin to take the next step. So
my fellow this year, I train plastic surgeons as well, and my fellow is from Montreal, from McGill.
Okay.
And, so he has a very hard time with what's going on with the Habs. It's tough to watch. But I told him, I said, you got to be patient. Like, this is,
Well, we had Ken Daniels on, the announcer for the Wings, and he told us it takes a good solid 10 years for the real true rebuild. And it really does.
It takes a long time. When your Wings are going through, you've been going through it, Jason. I mean, your team has reached the point where the expectation now is make the playoffs, because it's been several years of it.
We haven't been in 2015 or 16 or something like that. It's been
2016. If they, and I hate to say it, I believe if they miss again this year, that will be a franchise record for consecutive seasons without winning. Because back in the Dead Things era, I think that was back in the late 70s. They went 7 straight years. So yeah.
See, I didn't know that, but I just remember them being any good at all as a little kid.
Yeah.
Going to see him at the Olympia, and then when he switched over to Joe Louis. But it wasn't until kind of like the early 80s when they started saying, oh, there could be something happening here, when they drafted Yzerman. That was it. But I don't remember him ever being good at all in the 70s. I remember watching even on a black and white TV and saying, boy, this team is terrible, but they're my team.
And that's the thing, is the way it is now, like for where Montreal is building the way you have to build. Again, don't want to belabor the point too much, but Jeff Gorton, who's their president of hockey operations, he's the guy who built the Rangers that you see now. Okay. A lot of those players that are there now, that are part of that core, the Zibanejad, the Panarins, the kids that they drafted and brought in, the guys that you see now, like the Capo and Lafreniere and Philip Hedl and Adam Fox and so on. Those were guys that were brought in by Jeff Gorton when he was their general manager. He knows how to rebuild, and it takes several. And in the salary cap era, this is what it takes. You have to be patient. It's going to take several years, but if you do it right, you will have a solid decade. Say hello to Colorado Avalanche is a perfect example of that, where you're going to just have superstars that are going to give you a team that's going to have a chance to win the cup every year. So
but the Habs are actually having a little trouble right now too. They're kind of in need of a second line center, from what I was hearing earlier, and they're not doing what they should be doing, I think, this season anyway, at least for now.
Well, they are up there among the top 4 right now overall. And a lot of that's due to Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, and Mikko Rantanen. But to your point, though, you are right. They do need a second line center, and the word on the street is that they're going to be pushing hard for guys like Elias Lindholm. If they can't get him, they may look at Sean Monahan out of Montreal. They may look at some other options there. Maybe Adam Henrique from Anaheim is another possibility. But they are going to try to address that because they do want to stage another run for the cup. They were very disappointed in how things went last season. So, I expect them to be players at the trade deadline.
So, Jay, the Leafs?
I gotta ask. I mean,
Yeah.
they look pretty good this year. They look like they got some stuff together,
Mm,
but not quite what they
no.
had in mind. So
It's on playoff. Are they already in wild card now?
they're
They're back in third.
they're in
They
third.
yeah, they're in third. But if memory serves, your Red Wings are hot on their tail. So
No, they were till tonight when they got just destroyed by Dallas. But
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think, Lyle? What's the problem with the Leafs? Like, what, they have more firepower. I just watched them play in Anaheim, and it seemed like line after line, I was like, what chance does anybody have against these guys? Yet people have a chance against them a lot.
Big problem. Okay, well, it starts in net. The goaltending has really been a dog's dinner.
True.
They had a promise. They have a promising young goalie there in Joseph Wall, but he wound up getting injured, suffered a high ankle sprain, and as you know, as a doctor, it takes a long time to come back from those. But he's expected back after the All-Star break. In the meantime, Martin Jones has done a good job holding the fort because Ilya Samsonov, their other boy, oh boy, has he really struggled. Though since he came back from his stint with the Marlies, his last couple of games, he's actually shown improvement. So maybe his confidence is kind of coming back there. The big thing, though, too, is it's just, as always, it's just defensive depth. I mean, they've got one top, really true top pairing defenseman in Morgan Riley, and everybody else is just there. TJ Brody was good for a while, but he's a fading asset now. They were hoping for guys like Timothy Liljegren to maybe, be further along in his development. He's doing okay, but he's not quite there. Jake McCabe, they got him from Chicago, but he's not a top pairing guy. So there's really not a lot of studs on that blue line. And just just even on the checking lines as well. It's just not there. They are paying the price. And I'm not picking on John Tavares, but they're paying the price for that 11 mil per season contract that they signed him to in 2018 when they didn't need to sign him to that. They didn't need the firepower. I told people at the time, they were the fourth highest scoring team in the league coming off of that season. There was no reason to sign him when everybody knew defense was the issue. And when you're paying, I mean, sure, yes, you can say they paid too much for Matthews, they paid too much for Marner, and now, they paid so much for William Nylander. No, those are guys in their prime. They're among the best players in the league. You want to keep them, you got to pay top dollar. But John Tavares was, in his late 20s when they signed him to that deal. Now here he is, 33. He's got another year left on that contract, and he has really been struggling over the last quarter of this season. He's been scoreless now in his last 9 games, and this is a guy who's like centering your second line. So, yeah, they've got the firepower, Jay, to make the playoffs. That's not going to be an issue. I mean, unless the goaltending really falls apart on them. They got the firepower to make the playoffs, but there's just not enough there to stage a deep playoff run. There really isn't. I mean, yeah, they beat the Lightning last year to advance to the second round, and then the Florida Panthers made quick work of them.
Yeah, the Lightning were also hurt. I think when they played them,
exactly, and tired and older because they played. Remember, by last season, Jason, the Lightning had a lot of hockey, and all their veterans had played so much hockey over the last 4 years.
Right.
They were just tired and worn out. But they run into a hungry Florida Panthers team that had the depth. Lots of big guys there that can play playoff hockey. Yes, it's all fine and good that you can move the puck well, but we all know when the playoffs comes, that switch gets flipped, and now it's how much depth of physicality do you have? Part of the reason why my Habs surprised everybody and went to the Stanley Cup final, the number one reason was Carey Price, and number 2 was they had 4 Clydesdales on their defense with Shea Weber and Ben Sherrod and Joel Edmondson. I mean, they big guys that could shut you down. And, until they ran into the Lightning, who were just too deep to contain, they shut everybody else down. And that's the problem for the Leafs. They don't have that. They're not built for that. And whoever they face in the first round, I think it's going to happen again. You're going to see another first round exit and a lot of hand wringing in Toronto, and Sheldon Keefe will probably lose his job over that. If they don't stage a deep playoff run, well, they can't trade guys away now because all the core guys are signed to contracts you can't move. So, right. and nor do you want to. Do you really want to trade Austin Matthews? A guy who's on pace for 70 goals? No. Do you really want to trade William Nylander, who is really, he just gets better and better every year? No. Marner, maybe, but I doubt they will. And you can't trade Tavares because nobody's going to touch that contract. So Sheldon Keefe, I would say, unless they go deep in the playoffs, we're probably, if you're a Sheldon Keefe fan, enjoy watching him coach behind the Leafs bench, because he's probably not going to be there after this season if they don't go deep in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty good roundup of the Canadian teams, and I think that it's I love that
You got Ottawa. You can talk about Ottawa, but there's not really
I don't want
Do we really want to talk about Ottawa?
skip Ottawa too.
At least Montreal, we've got hope.
Yeah.
We have
You know
hope.
what? I'll tell you this: the Ottawa fan base really showed their true colors after DeBrincat left and came to the Wings, and they've just been horrible online. I mean, just petty and just really just awful people.
Well, I think a lot of that, though, Jason. And I mean, I don't excuse bad behavior, especially online. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think it was just, you're just seeing 7 years of just pure frustration, just finally bubbling to just not bubbling, spewing volcanically out to the surface now. I mean, they came into this year and they were so excited, had a new owner and
Right.
A new attitude, and everything was going to be better, and this was going to be the year, and no, it's not the year. And I think they're going to be in a better position now with Steve Staios in there as the general manager, because Michael Andlauer, I mean, this is he's a wealthy man, but he's also a hockey man. He owned a stake in the Montreal Canadiens. He owned the Hamilton Bulldogs OHL franchise, so he knows hockey. He knows Staios was one of his guys. And so obviously it was no surprise when he brought him in as president I believe it's team president. And then, when Dorian basically, did something he shouldn't have done when it came to making trades, they fired him and, went with Staios. And now you're seeing a coaching change that's just temporary for now with Jacques Martin, because he's going to be looking. I think their real guy is out there probably in this summer, and that's when you'll see the big change made there. But with Staios, you're going to start to see a bit of a shake up there. They're not going to move Brady Tkachuk. They're not going to move Tim Stützle. They're not going to move Thomas Chabot or Jake Sanderson, because those are their main core guys. I think you could see Jacob Chychrun on the move again, not because they don't like him, but they've got Sanderson and Chabot on their left side already. Chychrun's playing on the right side, but he's a left-hand shot and he's better on the left side. So I think you see him get traded. Maybe somebody like Drake Batherson gets traded, or Josh Norris as well, but there's going to be a bit of a shake up there as well. So, but for now, they're just, they're beating my Habs tonight, but really, who cares? Who cares?
Ottawa is just it's a sad state of affairs there for them. I know their fans are not happy and they need something, but there's just there's too many factors there.
Yeah.
My last question for you before we wrap up is, who do you think is going to win the Stanley Cup this year?
Oh boy. This is always a dangerous question.
Well, Jay, you have to clarify Stanley Cup now, because it is craze about these cups that all the young girls are drinking water out of.
The Stanley Cups. Yes.
My daughters got to clarify this now, which is unfortunate.
But who's gonna win the hockey trophy, the Stanley Cup?
Who's gonna win the hockey's holy grail? There we go.
I mean, it's a question I like to ask, not only because it's interesting to see what you think with where things are now, but it's more interesting to see how it does evolve, because things change, and it's very hard to pick the Stanley Cup winner.
It is. It used to be you could look at the top 4 teams in each conference. You could pick 2 out of there, and odds are you'd have pretty good odds of getting one right. But it's just changed so much. I mean, well, since Tampa Bay's mini dynasty kind of came to its natural end. Because last season nobody picked the Golden Knights, to go all the way, and nobody saw Florida getting in there because Florida had just barely squeaked into the playoffs. But they were a better team, as we've seen this season. Here they are in the top 4 in the East. Okay, well, that all being said, let me go to the West, because I think that's easier. And I'm looking at Vancouver and Winnipeg. And I know it's like, well, that seems to be the easy choices because they're playing so well. But honestly, I like what I'm seeing from those two clubs. I really, really do. There's a lot of cohesion there, and they just really seem on a roll, and they seem really hungry. These are two teams that have been kind of, like the Canucks have been kind of building in fits and starts, whereas the Jets, they were kind of on a slow decline for a while, and now it's like two teams with something to prove. So, and yes, there is the added incentive that I want to see a Canadian team and they finally win the cup after 30 years. Oh God, it's embarrassing. But
I think everybody does, Lyle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like you want to see some of these teams all look like they've got a chance, especially Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Vancouver. I think any one of those teams could be a Stanley Cup contender.
Yeah. And to be honest, I mean, we Canadian fans, I mean, we're starting to get a little tired of saying, an American team won the cup, but 2/3 of the team are made up Canadians, so technically we win. But in the Eastern Conference, though, that one is going to be harder to go for. I'd want to say Boston, but I look at last year when they had that just dominating regular season where they set records for wins and points, and they got bounced in the first round by Florida. So I'm not convinced that they've got enough there to go all the way. I want to say them, but I'm just not sold on them. I look at Florida. I think they could have enough. I think maybe they might be able to have enough there to maybe come back, because they really have surprised me at how they had they were without two of their best defensemen to start the season. And geez, they played just terrific. And Matthew Tkachuk was not at his best. And again, here they are, in the top four. Everywhere after that, beyond those guys, anybody. It really, in the East, it's a crapshoot. Roll the dice. Anybody could. Jason, you're going to hate me for saying this, but if your Wings get in, hell, why not them?
Well, I'll tell you this: if they do win, I win $15,000.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, if they win the cup, I get $15,000. If they get into the playoffs, I win $2,000. So I'll take that.
Take the $2,000. I think they can do it. Listen, I don't think Stevie Y is going to sit on his hands and the deadline rolls around here. Okay. No. I really think he wants to get these guys over the finish line. So I don't think he's going to sacrifice. He's not going to get crazy, but I think you're going to see him make some additions. Okay.
What move do you think they would potentially do? Do you think more on defense, you think? Or is
I do think they need to stiffen up there. I mean, the goaltending's got me. Alex Lyon, oh God, what a pickup he was for you guys. He really
had a bad night tonight, but it happens.
Well, it happens. And I mean, you've got a fairly reliable guy there in James Reimer as well. And
Husso's coming back off the IR though soon.
Yeah, exactly.
So he bounces back. But yeah, I'm just, our top pairing. Well, Sherratt's injured right now, but it's basically been Jake Bowman and Moritz Seider.
Yep.
So that's not a bad pairing, and Sherratt's been pretty solid for us. But I think that it's going to have to be something, either that or someone like that, or potentially another potential scoring forward. But I don't know who you trade for that.
Yeah, exactly. I think your odds I think you're better off going with what you got up front and just trying to shore that blue line up. Kind of shut things down a bit more and trust your offense, because they're right there. God, they're right there. They just need again, it doesn't have to be a big name. It doesn't have to be a big splash, but just.
I want Cam Fowler. I think he'd be awesome coming back home, at least for the end of his towards the end of his career. I mean, Jeff Petry's been kind of hot and cold. Paired with Sherratt, mostly. But, I think that like a guy like a Cam Fowler, or like a seasoned veteran to come in, would be a really good solid move for them personally. But
will they be willing to pay? Yeah, will Stevie Y be willing to pay Pat Verbeek's asking price, because Verbeek learned his game at Stevie Y's right hand. So
I'm just hoping maybe somehow Stevie has some pictures on Verbeek. That's all I'm hoping.
Hey Pat, you remember that camping trip?
Got a video with some pictures.
Fowler for the playoff.
There you go.
We're going Gibson while we're at it.
There you go.
Oh man, there you go. That wouldn't be a bad call. Yeah, I mean, I think, quite honestly, from my standpoint, and which nobody asked me, but I'll say it.
Sure.
The Rangers look dominant.
The Rangers do look good, but again, they'll have these nights where they just
suck.
It's like, what are you? I mean, yeah, and not just one night, like several nights in a row, and it's like,
they got pasted by the Golden Knights.
Ooh,
Pasted.
There was a lesson right there. Like, you guys think you're cup contenders, huh? Let this defending champion show you how it's done.
It could be a cup final.
It'd be an interesting one. I mean, listen, I wouldn't rule the Rangers out. It's not that I didn't want to mention them when I was talking about out of the East. It's just, again, it's just such a crapshoot there. So
it is. I mean, they've got a lineup. It's just like line after line and defensive pairing after pairing. It's tough. I think that if they pull it together towards the playoffs, they have a shot as well. But all those other teams are playing great as well. So we'll see.
Yep.
Going to come down to injuries, goaltending, and what they do at the trade deadline for whoever gets this cup, for sure.
Exactly.
Well, listen, Lyle, we really appreciate you coming on. This is awesome. I know our listeners are going to love this one. This is who listens to Dr. Hockey. They love to put together like what's going on, where are we going with this, and then they go and watch it and come back for more. It's really great information. We love having you on and appreciate you taking the time.
Always a pleasure, guys, and let's do it again sometime. It's a lot of fun.
Cool. All right, Lyle. Thanks again.
Thank you.